So, I want to talk to you today about toxic shame, codependency, and narcissism. How these things fit together. And I want to talk to you about it because it's something that has affected me in my life. And it's difficult to see it for what it is. It's really difficult to see how other people might participate in this and how you might be participating in this. Because to the person who's behaving this way, it's a defensive strategy. They don't think they're attacking anybody. They think they're protecting themselves. Because the way that codependency or narcissism arises is that a person suffers some kind of shame or humiliation for something that they can't resolve. Typically because it's a developmental issue. They're not in a place to see the appropriate context, to understand that the criticism they've received that has created the shame or humiliation isn't valid, or that somebody crossed their boundaries in a way that was inappropriate and is their fault, and that should have never happened. They're not able to make sense of it in a way so as to appropriately dismiss these inappropriate sources of shame. And so because of that, it gets internalized. There's no way for them to get rid of it. Right? If somebody makes you feel ashamed, let's say, especially if something that you can't not do, if it's an aspect of being a human being and somebody makes you feel ashamed of it, well then, what do? If it's something that you can't avoid doing as a person, then you just always feel ashamed. So, you choose a different strategy. You either inflate your own value in your mind, or you inflate your value in someone else's mind. And both of those prevent other people from criticizing you and triggering shame. One is offensive. That's a codependent. It's funny because people would think of the narcissist as the offensive person. They're actually the defensive one. The offensive person acts on you first. They overdo for you. They give you too much. They give you too much so that when you do have a criticism, when you do have a complaint about them, you're much more likely to stuff it. You're much more likely to cross your own boundaries and not stick up for yourself and say what you actually need. You'll think, well, that person does A, B, C, and D for me, so it's not really that big of a deal that they did X. I guess I can live with that. It's okay. And so the person who's been wronged by the codependent person doesn't attack them, doesn't criticize them, doesn't bring them into conflict, because they feel indebted to a certain degree because the codependent person overgave and they overaccepted because they didn't know this game was going to play out later. This little covert contract, as I've heard it called, was in place. Now the narcissist, they do the opposite thing. They don't attempt to stop you from criticizing them. Not nearly as much. They may, but they might use power, or they might attack you reputationally so that your criticism doesn't hold as much weight. But the primary strategy is to inflate their own value inside themselves so that they can justify doing those other things. And so in that way, they're actually defensive. They don't try to stop the criticism from ever happening. They try to reduce its weight on them when it does happen. And they do that through associating themselves with something of such great benefit or such special character that it allows them special privilege to not feel ashamed or criticized by that thing that has been leveled against them, whatever it may be. They can say, well, I hold such and such position. So while it's true that somebody else shouldn't do that or shouldn't have done that, I don't have time to worry about things like that. So it's different for me. Right? You can say that. Or they can say, yeah, I'm such a genius in this area that, who cares about this other thing? That's not valuable. I'm not wasting my time on that. And so then they can justify not being a decent person in some other aspect of their life and dismissing the criticism that comes along with that from normal, well-minded people who are genuinely just valid in their evaluation of what occurred. And they do this because if that criticism lands, if somebody criticizes the codependent and it makes them feel ashamed, it may activate or bring to the surface that shame that they've had to dissociate from, that they're hiding from, that's driving all of this offensive behavior to prevent further criticism. And the narcissist does the same. If I can dismiss the criticism, then I don't have to feel the shame that comes with it. And in either of those two cases, it's just a person trying to protect themselves from some hurt that they've been unable to actually process, to manage, to move through. And sometimes the people don't even know what the hurt is, so they don't even know what it is to fix, right? So if somebody suffers abuse of some kind, it's not uncommon for people to repress that. And if that happens, and the person doesn't know why they're feeling so triggered, they don't know why minor criticisms might cause such deep shame, because the shame isn't actually coming from the criticism. There might be 10% of it, but 90% is coming from this thing that they can't identify because sometimes it happens pre-verbally. They don't have words to articulate it with, or memories, specific episodic memories to point to say, well, most of that shame is coming from this thing and not actually from what the other person said. They can't do that. So they think it's all coming from the person criticizing them. And so they think it's a incredibly mean, hurtful thing that this other person is doing to them because of how much they hurt. So they respond to those people in their life to the same level of their hurt, not commensurate with what actually happened or with the actual weight of the criticism. No, they're responding to the weight of the hurt. So how do those people get through this? Because I've heard so many people say narcissists never heal. And codependence, they talk about boundaries and things like that. There's a little more hope, it sounds like, generally in the public, about how people would tend to approach either of these two things. And I think, in general, that's wrong. I think you can heal. I think people who are narcissistic can stop being narcissistic. People who are codependent can stop being codependent. But it's not from treating the symptoms of the codependency. It's not about stopping the behaviors, the codependent behaviors. It's not about stopping the narcissistic behaviors in so much as it is actually managing the trauma of this unresolved shame, whatever the origin, whether it was physical abuse, sexual abuse, or it was just inappropriate shaming from other people, or lack of care, because that can make you feel ashamed. And if you have genuine basic needs, and you have parents who are overwhelmed and burdened in some way, that struggle in their life to meet those needs, and they approach that child with that burdened sense in themselves, then that child can certainly feel ashamed for generating this negative emotion in this other person with whatever need it may have been that that person has. And if it's a true need, then that person can't do anything about it. They're going to have that need for the rest of their life. And then you see people have all these weird, maladaptive strategies around basic things. Eating and sleeping and doing basic stuff in their life. They struggle to do it. It's like, well, why? Because at some point somebody associated that with pain. It's not like people don't want to get themselves together. Everybody wants to be the best that they can be. There's very few people who are genuinely hell-bent on destruction. They're out there, but there's not nearly as many as people would like to think. In truth, there's just a lot of hurt people. So the way that you heal that, the way that you heal that shame, there's a whole bunch of different ways depending on what it was that caused it, but I can tell you the most reliable one is God. Because to the narcissist, you get somebody who's always inflated beyond what you can inflate yourself. You get an authority you have to answer to no matter what. And you may feel like you don't have to answer to any other man, but you'll always have to answer to God. And to the codependent, you can get, or you can find in God somebody who will tell you that you're valuable and you have enough, and allow you to expose your shame in a way that you can't vulnerably do with other people. You might not be able to talk to other people about it, especially if you're codependent, because that's the whole point of that strategy, is to avoid talking about it or even getting close to it. Now, you can talk about it with God. And I think a lot of these aspects, I think narcissism and codependence, a lot of it comes from when you're a kid. So a lot of it is parent-based. And you can reparent yourself and treat yourself the way that a loving parent would. And you can do that. You can. And that is great. It helps a lot of people. It's going to take a long time. Because if you're affected in this way, you're not a perfect parent. And you have to learn how to be a perfect parent. And you're going to have to do it long enough and consistently enough that you can undo those other aspects of yourself. But if you look at somebody like Jesus, who is the perfect archetypal mother and father in one, then you just have to believe what's written about him. Because it literally is the perfect archetypal mother and father in one. He's both all forgiving, all loving, all correcting. Never gets tired of you screwing up and is always willing to help you do a little better. And if you're willing to live by the tenets expressed in the Bible by Jesus, then you'll be treated the way that a good, loving, merciful parent, male or female, would have treated you. And if you can genuinely build a relationship in that way, you can externalize this reparenting to a relationship that you can actually act submissively with. Because if the hurt happened in an asymmetrical relationship, it's going to heal easier in an asymmetrical relationship as well. It's hard to submit to yourself. You end up having to be both parent and child at the same time, and so people do these, inner child work and stuff, and that's helpful. That's great. I'm not at all criticizing it. I'm saying that you don't have to do that. You can do it faster if you're willing to submit to the authority of God. Now, shame is a really tough thing to deal with. So if you look in the Bible, what's the first emotion? It's the first emotion, literally, that people feel. They eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and shame. It's at the bottom. There is wholeness, and then there is shame that eats away from it, or eats away at it, and makes you less. And it will continue to make you less until you find a way to deal with it. Now, the other thing that you can do, and this is practical, and you can do in your relationships as they stand, is stop reacting to others when they have valid criticism. And that's hard, because you're going to start reacting whether you know it's valid or not at first, if you've been doing this for a long time. But there are things you can do to help develop that time between hearing and responding. And it'll allow you to feel appropriate shame. And when you feel appropriate shame, and it comes from somebody in the appropriate context, such that you can actually do something about it, and you can actually express some control over it, it increases your ability to express control over the inappropriate shame too. So, if somebody gives you valid criticism, they give you an opportunity to process some of your unprocessed shame. If you can sit in the discomfort, and if you can take what they say and do something with it. If somebody tells you, hey, you're really leaving me out on a limb when you do this. If you can be humble, not over-explain or make excuses, you can take responsibility for it and do something about it. It's going to increase your capacity, your confidence to do something about the rest, about the inappropriate shame, to confront it. And I can't remember who I heard say this recently, but confidence is courage repeated. And that's what it is. It's courage. If you can muster the courage to hear what other people think of you, and then to do something about it, then you've got a shot at taking control back over shame. And you can do something about the shame that you couldn't do something about before. Each time you do it, you get a little more control. And you can process a little more. You get rid of a little more. You can feel a little more whole. And you can move on with your life, living the way that God intended you to live. Happy, whole. Not beleaguered by everyone around you. So, I hope that this is helpful to somebody. It's helpful to me. I've struggled a lot with codependency. And at times with narcissism too. And it's terrible. And I see other people, and I see the people in my family from which, it's kind of tumbled down the generations, and it sucks. It's just lives of either worrying too much or too little. Maybe worry is not the right word. But anyway, I hope that's helpful. God bless.